Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm, and I'm here in my indoor propagation room where I've taken these cuttings here, I've been rooting them underneath humidity domes and artificial lights. What I want to talk about today is that artificial light. In fact, what I want to talk about in general is the topic of how much light do your cuttings need to root properly. And the first thing I want to point out is how unreliable your primary instrument for detecting light is. That is, your eyes. Your eyes constrict and dilate their pupils as you move in and out of dark places and light places. And so it compensates and can fool you into thinking you have enough light when you don't. Certainly you aren't going to get any reliable readings from those. So you have another instrument in your pocket right now. That's your smartphone. And there's an app you can download, a free app from the Play Store I did for Android called the Lux Light Meter by Doggo Apps. It's sort of a yellow icon. I'll give you some screenshots so you see what to download. It isn't a scientific level of accuracy, but it certainly is far more reliable than your eyes at telling how much light you need. And what I'll do is I'll go through this room where I've had successful and less successful dimmer places and show you those light readings, and I'll compare that to outdoor as well. I'm going to start with this tray that I was just hovering over because it actually has really good rooting. I can feel that these are starting to pull back from the base, so they've gone past the callousing stage and right into rooting. And it is in a bright area of the room, sort of between the two lights, and it has some access to window light as well. So the way this app works is it has a sensor on the front end of your phone. It's not the same as the front-facing camera, and it's not the same as the rear-facing camera. But if I place it flat like this above the crop, and you can see that even a little tilt like this will change what the reading is. But I hope you can get a picture of the light reading there. And in lux, it's reading this around 1200 lux, which in this spot appears to be a really good amount for rooting roses. Now here at the very dimmest corner of the table, I've placed these cuttings of a rugosa rose, snow pavement. I placed them over here because in previous experience I found that my rugosa roses will actually drop leaves and brown out very, very quickly under intense light. So I've actually intentionally decided to give them less light. So let's see how much less light they have over here. I hope again you can get a reading over there. But on this corner of the table, it's around between 800 and 900 lux is what I've been reading. And that sounds pretty consistent to me with just its placement with the lights. Taking this act outside now, you'll see as I scan around here that this is not a sunny day. This is what I would call a bright, cloudy day. And yet on the app here, I'm reading something like 6,000 lux, or let's say 5 times as much as I was reading on the bright location indoors, which just gives you an idea of how intense and how excessive the light can be outdoors. For that reason, when I'm propagating out of my greenhouse, I usually place a shade covering over the outside walls of the greenhouse to get the right amount of light. You could also look for, say, a location outdoors that's sort of semi-shaded by overhead vegetation, or gets morning sun but afternoon shade, something to keep that light level down so that your cuttings don't crisp up in the intense light. Just want to give you a quick caution about the numbers I've given you today, because obviously this is not a scientific instrument and this app may produce widely varying results from phone to phone to phone, although I'd be interested to hear that from you in the comments below. One thing I will say is that I think it can be useful just in terms of you logging your own efforts and successes and failures, that if you know how much light at least your phone was reading, then if you change that and you see a difference, then you can go and guide your future efforts and placement of cuttings from there onwards. Let's talk just a little bit about the physiology of your cutting and why you have to give this much attention to light and other environmental details. So once you've cut that from the main plant, it loses access to moisture, nutrients, and sugar that can be moved around throughout the plant. So it has to be on its own. The problem is it can't handle as much light as it did when it was a part of the plant. The reason for that, of course, is again lack of moisture from the plant. So it has to be given a lower level of light, but it still does need light. What does it need light for? Well, of course, it's going to get energy from the sun, but it also takes that sugar that it develops through its leaves and sends it down the stem, and at the bottom of that stem, it's sending it signals. It's sending it messages through that photosynthate, that sugar solution that tells it to start to develop its own roots. So you can supplement that, speed that along with a little bit of rooting hormone. That will send the signal too, but it does that sugar that it's developing through its leaves does have an important biological role of telling the plant how to root. We've talked a little bit about the intensity of cuttings and how you can measure that with your smartphone, but you can also measure it by looking at the plants and the reaction of the plants to the amount of light. If you're giving it far too much light, and particularly far too much light and heat, you'll see that they will brown out or yellow out very quickly, start dropping their leaves in response to that high light intensity. And so that's a good sign that you've given them too much. If you give them too little, on the other hand, what you'll see is they'll keep their leaves, they'll stay green like this, but then they will just sit there and kind of do nothing for a long period of time because they're just not getting enough energy to do what they need to do. As for duration of light, your natural day length is just fine. If you went for 8 or 10 or 12 hours of light, if you're doing the artificial light, that's just fine. I don't think there's any particular advantage to going up to something like 18 or 24 hours, although I could be proven wrong, that's fine. Once they have begun to root, once they've got those callus on, once they've begun to root, I like to bring them up to higher light levels relatively quickly. You want to start providing them with enough energy to give strong growth. You notice on the greenhouse behind me here that I don't have shade on here anymore because all of these cuttings are fully rooted now, and so I need to give them enough energy to grow into healthy plants before they have to handle something like winter or additional stresses. In a greenhouse like this one here, you get high temperature stability. That's one of the nice things about a big greenhouse like this. But if you are growing in one of those little humidity domes, and one of the reasons why I took that exercise indoors, I just need to give you one final caution here about light levels, is that in an enclosed space like that the light will produce, obviously, the light, the growth, but it will also trap heat inside that container very quickly. So there's kind of two reasons why you're offering shade under a humidity dome early on, is one, to manage the light levels, but second, not to trap all that excess heat that will have it up above optimum rooting temperatures very quickly. And I'll just throw in a couple of quick guidelines in Fahrenheit and Celsius about best rooting temperatures. All right, thanks so much for watching today. I hope that answered some of your questions about how much light you need to be successful with rooting cuttings. And if you have any questions about this or any other propagation topic, please drop those into the comments below the video.